All right, I would like to call this meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District Policy Committee to order at 4:09 p.m. I will announce that the meeting is being recorded and ask you to do a roll call. Freeman? Here.
Right.
Here.
Here. Okay, we will move on to the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Moving on to public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the policy committee that are not on the agenda. The committee will not take action on any item not on the agenda, except as provided by law. Okay,
So first,
do we have public comments? No. Okay, moving on to discussion action items, community spaces, rental fees discussion. Jonathan, here we go.
let Maya talk about it with you, and you guys had an attachment in there with all the data from the retreat and then the policy drafts.
Yeah, so we have results from the worksheets. Very excited to talk.
Can I
Yeah.
ask if we can put
Yeah.
whatever we end up looking at on the screen? Just because I don't have my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So first thing I want to share from the worksheets that kind of guided the way that I looked at this was something that Ella did. And she wrote, this diagram of like kind of helping how she envisions, us to conceptualize this. So I'm going to go through everything, but I do make a similar diagram, kind of looking at this and making different quadrants. So just starting out as an inspirational point. So moving on, I want to talk first about some of the qualitative conclusions. So I know that we had a lot of different scenarios, but a lot of people wrote comments on things. So I used the quantitative data to really create a model of how we want to make the policies, but I think these qualitative points help us think about exceptions, like what exceptions do we want to some of these like concrete policies. So I thought of 2, potentially 3 exceptions. So the first exception is local IB residents like families or low-income households can apply for sliding scale payment by providing proof enrollment in another low-income program, including medical, food stamps, electricity rates, etc. In the application, please provide proof of residence, overall met budget, and desired sliding scale price. So that's like one potential exception we can have. Another one being that nonprofits, local businesses, and UCSB clubs can apply for sliding scale payment by providing their operational budget. We can make this different for each of these groups, but let's say if you have an operation budget of blank is more and blank is less, and we can kind of talk about what numbers that we would want to plug into something. And we would have different scales for like nonprofits versus business versus clubs, because they all have different scales of operations typically. So those are 2 qualitative things that I noted. And then one other thing was something that was briefly mentioned throughout some of these worksheets, was thinking about frequency and when people are using the space a lot, monitoring that. And so one idea I had is we could do something like maybe first 10, I made up this number, we can play around with it. First 10 events are free for X, Y, and Z. After that, a fee schedule applies. So we could look at something like that if frequency is something that we want to consider. These are a couple of the groups below that frequency was noted as something to be aware of. So those are some qualitative things like the exceptions, but let's talk about quantitative, looking at the actual, I don't know why it stopped.
The internet disconnected.
The joys.
1 second.
The quantitative is basically we put all of the responses in an Excel sheet. We put a 1 if one of the categories influenced the external option, and then a 0 if it didn't. That's kind of how we compiled the results. This next part I can read. It's not super visual.
Is it still getting the YouTube stream?
Yeah,
it is. So it's just my computer's Wi-Fi. It's just
Are you on 5G?
It won't connect to 5G. All right, it's back.
So overall, most of the responses showed that most events should be free or low payment. And an event charged a high amount depends mostly on what the event is. And remember that what category was whether or not it was open or closed. Second thing that mattered was when the event was, and then finally who was like the least. In everything, I noticed where it was versus like community room versus community center just did not matter at all for the most part, according to the responses that we saw. So if an event charged a low amount, again, mainly depends on what the event was, secondly, when, and finally who. So this was a pretty consistent trend that we saw. The most important thing, open or closed, then when it was, if it was during a prime time or a non-prime time, and then finally who, which is kind of where we see some of these exceptions come into play for certain groups. So both high and low results were consistent with each other when looking at what matters to influence the price. Neither paid nor free classifications were influenced by where the reservation was. So this is kind of why the model that I went with has just a flat number for each space. We can change that, but based on the data, that's what we saw. In the attachment, I go through every single scenario and talk about what quadrant they would file in, which I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but just go and scroll all the way to the bottom, Jonathan. This is the, where did I put the tier? It's after policy drafts, I think. A little more. Yep. So this is kind of like the triangle system that I brainstormed. So on the x-axis, right? Yeah, x-axis at the bottom, we have open event and then closed event. And then on the y-axis, we're looking at prime time, kind of prime time, and I'll explain that in a second, and then slow time. And we divide it up this way. So prime time, I define a little bit higher up as basically, okay, yeah, primetime slots. Primetime slots would be Monday to Thursday from 5 p.m. onwards. That's the most popular times that we see. Friday to Saturday from 12 p.m. onwards. And then Monday and Friday, discounts apply. So what I mean by that is like Monday and Friday, weirdly, out of all the days, are actually less popular than the others. So like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are very primetime spots. Saturday, super primetime spot. Then Monday and Friday. So that's kind of how I organized it, just talking with Leslie based on what we've seen at the spaces. So that's why we have prime time being Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Fridays, same time, a little bit cheaper, and then slow time. And so then we have free. So during a slow time, when the event is open to the public, quadrant 1 says it would be free. For a slow time and the event is closed to the public, it could be free or low. Maybe that's a sliding scale. Then on a Monday or Friday, prime time that's open to the public, a low fee. That's quadrant 3. And then same time, but closed to the public, low to high, that could be a sliding scale. Then moving up, prime time, so that's that. You know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, prime times. If it's open to the public, low to high can be sliding scale. And if it's closed to the public, then high with room for some of those exceptions that I noted from the qualitative responses. So that's kind of like the overarching model that the policies are kind of rooted in.
Do the numbers on the triangle, like, are those how many events fall into each of those categories that we saw?
I labeled them as like quadrants so that when you look
Okay.
at each scenario, you can kind of see what quadrant it would classify.
Okay.
Classify.
Having 6 quadrants.
Six
Yeah, I
quadrants.
know. That's
I think we call these a sextant.
Thank you. For me, like quadrants is the only word that makes sense. Okay, so leading me to the policies, and I'm gonna blab about all this and then just let you talk. So just, you know, cut me off if you want. But generally, free or low payment events are ones that provide a high community benefit, are open to the public, or occur during non-prime times. Paid events are events that generate revenue, are closed to the public, or occur during a prime time, should incur a higher fee. Prime time slots, I'll just repeat them for reference, Monday to Thursday, 5 p.m. onwards, Friday to Saturday, I guess this would be Friday to Sunday, I don't know, Friday to Sunday, 12 p.m. onwards, and then Monday and Friday, as I said, discounts apply because they are less prime.
Can we call it like standard paid events or something as opposed to just paid events? Because
Yeah.
it makes it kind of.
I like that. Standard. And then we have those sliding scale payment exceptions that I talked about earlier. So like one, local residents. Eligible residents can apply for sliding scale payments. Then I have these documentations that they can provide, like low-income program, residents, their event budget, what they'd like to pay. Nonprofits, local businesses, newsfeed clubs, sliding scale based on their budget. We can define the budgets. And then different scales apply based on the type of event. Free if the event is providing services and open to the public. Low cost if the event is for internal planning and closed to the public. Higher cost if the event generates revenue or is closed to the public. And then UCSD clubs, low cost if open to the public, higher cost if closed. Again, it's along that same like quadrant based idea. This is just it written out with some specifics. Then I go through every single event scenario. I'm not going to talk about each of them, but I will highlight a little lower. Yeah, I do. Your attention to out in some way? Do we just want to make them free? So that's why they're highlighted in red, is because there's a discrepancy between the worksheet desires and what this new system kind of creates.
In my Google Docs dark mode
Oh.
is I was like, wait a second.
Invisible.
Yeah.
Essentially invisible. So what these
I
are, I'll let you know.
I found it.
It's the local art collective gallery. That would be an open event on a weekend, so it's a prime time, which would be quadrant 5. A community later town hall, open weekday, quadrant 5, and then again, local organization /workshop, open weekday.
And these are ones that you're saying are actually going to cost money, even though you put them under section 2 free.
Because free was what the results on the survey I gave you all, that's what you wanted. You wanted
Yeah.
these to fall in
These
free.
3 bullet points are organized by, these 3 sets of bullet points are
Yes.
organized by how we classified them on the worksheets.
Yes.
Not based on, okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And so you wanted to highlight the red,
Mm.
be like, oh, this kind of disagrees with other things said out loud.
Exactly. Exactly.
Quadrant 5 is the low, wait,
Low, high.
low
Open to the-
slash high. What is
Yeah.
low slash high?
Mhm.
It
So
could be-
sliding
Open to the
scale.
public at a
It could be
certain time.
high depending on the event.
Mhm.
Scrolling up to the.
Because that's another thing.
So it's because they're on a weekend that they need to pay.
Yeah, prime time. That's why they're up so high.
Mhm.
It's because it's a prime time.
What is the difference in price between 4 and 5?
So that's another thing. I don't have any assigned dollar amount. I just talked about low, high versus free. So that's also something
These are
that
both
I
listed as low high, so I'm wondering like what is the, maybe I will generalize my question. What is the expected difference in, like, is there an expected difference between 4 and 5?
between 4
Like
and
5 will be cost more
Like,
than
is it
4.
the same low, high between 4 and 5?
I mean, that was my idea. To me.
I agree. If we were to keep like your framework, do you think the organizers of these events would be willing to move them to non-prime times in order to avoid the fee?
I think that if their budget was extremely limited, then yes,
Mhm.
I think that they would.
Okay.
I don't think that they would necessarily want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these are like good times, like when people are out of school, out of work, you know. It also depends on, you know, what type of event it is and what they're looking for, but yeah, I would think their budget's limited, they'd probably. Especially, let's say if it's like a closed, you know, club meeting and it's maybe a smaller group.
Mhm.
And if they just had it at a non-prime time, it would be free versus like if they had it in a prime time, they'd be paid. They'd be incentivized to try and
Yeah.
make it in a non-prime time. But yeah, that's basically everything. The last thing is just additional considerations, which is just like right above the triangle. That's like an appendix. I put it.
And so prime time includes, maybe I misunderstood. Prime time is on the weekdays in the evenings?
Monday
Just in
through
the
Thursday,
evenings.
5 p.m.
Okay.
onwards.
And so for example, this community leader town hall scenario, that was expected to not just be weekday, but weekday evening?
That was something that actually happened.
Which one?
The town hall. I
Budget.
think it was like,
Our town,
no, I think that was
No.
Lower Camp's town hall.
Yeah, I think it was Laura Caps's.
Laura Cass, okay.
Yeah, it was.
And that
on
was in a week,
Monday.
that was in a weekday evening.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because she's trying to take a weekday evening, we want to charge her. I like that.
I like that idea because the way that that's worded, if we scroll to the red, it said like community leader. And so I feel like it starts to get to the realm where if you're gonna have a certain number of attendees that you're expecting, then like you can also, if you're like a solo leader, it's likely that you would be able to fundraise in some way, whether it's through, yeah, I just
She
imagine.
can just move it to a non-prime time slot and probably.
If-
And I think
that
that's what
is a
makes me
finance.
feel okay about this.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, it stinks that these people would have to pay.
I then want to say for like local organization class workshop, if we consider it to be such a sufficiently high value workshop that they like are gonna like, that we want the community to have it, they can come to the board and ask if we want to fund it, and you know, Mike can add it to her whole program or something.
Right, she has a
Exactly.
budget.
Yeah, like you don't. So I don't think that one's a big deal either.
Yeah, that could even be like a form of like, you know,
Sundays or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that. So I'm gonna unread these then. These two at least. The leader and organization class / workshop. Do we feel okay with that? I mean, we've thrown around the number of like $20, you know, it could be something like that, $20 an hour. It could be $20 for the entire space, for the entire event.
And finance committee wants 25,000 raised.
Per event. Oh, okay.
No, no, for the whole year, to cover the janitorial costs.
Okay.
And we could do something where like maybe, you know, a big event in the community center has like a flat rate of like $150 because that's still really cheap compared to other things in the area. Those would be the numbers I would kind of use to base on, keeping things very equitable. From there, it's up to your discretion, what you feel.
So barring that we have a target, I would have suggested that we try a number for a while and see if we have, if we still have like too many people accessing prime time, and then we can keep raising the amount until.
I do.
I liked the comment that came up. I'm sorry.
You're good.
I like the comment that came up during the board meeting though, about like if we start really too high and we scare everyone off and they never come back. So that's why that's why like, I mean, I want to be clear, like let's like start an arbitrary number, I think start at a low number and then raise it over time and see if we're getting.
Yeah.
So.
I do think it should be hourly, just
Mhm.
because of the amount of emphasis we're placing on prime time. And I think that like doing an event that maybe overlaps like a prime and a non-prime time and just
Mm.
having a flat rate for that can get into like, okay, so how much are we charging them? That being said, I don't know, I agree, like starting on the lower end of the scale for hourly payment. Do you know like what it is hourly to use other spaces? Like what's the high end?
Yeah, I actually do have an Excel sheet with that. I'm trying to think what Excel sheet I put that on. I put the price match, maybe for the board retreat. This is one of these data clean ones, I think. Okay, local competitors. Here we go. So for flat rates, the higher side of things is like $1,000, $1,700. Middle would be around like $350, and then like low end is like $175, $215, $90. Those are like flat rates. I will say there's not a ton of things that you can do hourly like that.
Mhm.
A lot of it's per day, per 4 hours, 8 a.m. to sunset. But if you were to break that out, like let's say like this is, a capacity, let's say this has a capacity of 60 people, which is like comparable to here. I think it would be a little less. And they have, 75 for 4 hours. So that's what, 25 an hour?
Mhm.
So we would still be cheaper than them. And I think that that's probably the least expensive thing on the sheet.
Might that be something like they've got cleaning people who come every 4 hours or something? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Sounds good.
Corwin Pavilion and USEN
Okay.
meeting rooms.
Mhm.
That's their price.
Mhm.
And so that could
I
be
don't think they
some.
clean after you.
They don't.
Yeah.
Besides like helping you move chairs if you ask, you have to call them. Can you please help us?
That's true. That's true.
I think for like what we're considering like our higher paid events, I think $25 an hour is fine. I think for our lower paid events, it should be like honestly probably like under 10.
And difference between this room and the bigger one, or
I guess let me see what qualifies as like a high paid event. Close to the public during a prime time.
Yeah, as of right now, location is not a factor in this.
Mhm.
Because it didn't seem to be a big factor in when I collect data. However, like, do I necessarily agree with that? I don't know. Like, these are very different spaces and like size, capacity, what you can do with them, location, potential. So I don't think it would be unfair to have a different price for each one. But again, whatever you think. But under 10, like 7.
Yeah. Maybe like 8.
We could do 8. $8 an hour.
I do think, yeah.
Ish.
I see what you're saying about different prices for different spaces and just looking at the events that fall under like the quadrant 6. I'm thinking maybe like $25 an hour for big community center because that feels like even if we're comparing that to like USEN meeting rooms, that space has a lot more potential than those
Way
do
more,
in
yeah.
the USEN. And then maybe doing like $20 an hour here.
Yeah, I mean, $5 different an hour does make a big difference, especially if you have like a pretty long event.
Yeah.
I think those are good springboard points.
And then low pay, we could do similar to that logic. It could be like $10 an hour for center versus 8 for
8,
room.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Is there any other kind of like sticky points on this that you want any elaboration, or do we like these quadrants? Quadrants. We can change any of them.
No, this makes sense to me. Yeah, I mean, Jay, do you think those numbers are too high and we're going to scare people off from using the community center?
No.
Okay. Because I feel like even just experience of like what we've done at Dems and how much we've paid to have like spaces for our banquet, this is so much less than that. And like even having like a lot of club meetings are like 1 hour a lot of the time. So it's like, okay, $20 to use this room. If you want to put on a bigger event, it's going to be 2 hours long. Like $40 realistically is like such a small portion of your budget, especially when you look at like what you're paying for food and everything. Like, I feel like
Food's
this is
like
chill.
100 at
Yeah.
Minimum, yeah.
Do you guys think, I'm thinking it does count, but when they reserve it, let's say you want 4 to 5, but then you get like 3:30 to set up and until 5:30 to clean up, do you charge them for the cleanup and setup time?
I think
thinking so, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Because then it's off limits to other people.
Yeah.
That's-
And as of right now, and I do think this would be a good place to start, but like these are all inclusive. Like you're not paying extra for the tables, you're not
Yeah.
paying extra for the chairs. Like this is your rate and you get everything in the space.
You know, people have been, this is a separate, related, but separate note, but I think a lot of people have been asking if they can rent our stuff.
Yeah, that's
Like-
actually, that is something to bring up because they're
That's-
not using our space at all. And they're asking if they could just rent like our tables and chairs. And right now, sometimes we'll be like, you know, you don't need to rent it, but we'll let you borrow it, especially if it's close. You know, when they're doing something like right in this park right here, we've been pretty lenient, or like right in People's Park, like proximity. And also it has to work out with the events in there. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you have to like think about like scheduling like a time to pick up and drop off and then making sure they don't have it. So it would be tricky to rent them out because there's only some circumstances where like you could.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we don't have like a storage facility for just like extra tables and stuff. Like we're already as a district looking at storage for our other
Mhm.
tools and equipment. So
Yeah.
fleet vehicles.
Yeah. Really, the fleet vehicles.
We have two.
We do. We
At
do.
least
We
two.
do. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, I will organize this into a much prettier policy. I feel like they're kind of a lot of old, and I'm gonna get rid of the quadrant examples because we'll just kind of see how it goes. Do we like the exceptions though? We feel comfortable keeping those in? Do we want?
Be a bit harder for a lot of different things because other than like the obvious, maybe those are the only ones that actually repeats, maybe it's fine. I was thinking that like other than for like an obvious like meeting that's trying to do repeat, people are just gonna like be like, you rent it this time, then I'll rent it next time, and then you rent it this.
That's so true. And also, you know, 10 was like the arbitrary number, but let's say if it's a quarter and they have like one event per quarter, does it reset every quarter? Because then it's always free, you know?
But maybe the only people who are actually renting it that many times are things that want to have the same branding across all of their meetings. So then it'll be, so maybe it's not a problem. Maybe you actually can, like in the sense, maybe you can implement this. I don't have an opinion.
Maybe it could be later if we see that
Yeah.
the fees aren't super, they're not being effective, we can put this in as something instead of lowering the fee, you could try doing this. Because it is kind of lowering the fee. If you're doing it for the whole year, you're getting a 30% discount.
We could even say like first event free, like one first time you use the space, maybe it's free. But then again, I do kind of like the pricing for the sense of ownership and responsibility that I think it will instill in people too.
Mhm.
So
Something that you could implement is really complicated. You're not gonna want to do it and the users are gonna get confused, but I think there's some power to it. I'm gonna mention it. Is longer before you want to reserve it, the more it costs. So like essentially it's like if you're the kind of person who's able to like, just stop by and like, oh, the room's free, can I use it now? It's like, sure, just use it. Like, whereas like, if you want to like, oh, you want to reserve it tomorrow, that costs a little bit of money. You want to reserve something like a year in advance because it's so important to you that this exact date, the exact date that it occurs on, that costs money.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And then for anyone who's trying to do kind of like these repeat things that actually can lock it in, either they're going to be using like Slack space, in which case, oh, it's fine. You're barely affecting anything as you keep showing up the day before and finding out what's available and taking it. And I don't really care if you want to do it all the time. You're not affecting anybody. You're not using up anyone else's time. But if you're doing it like you want it to be every third Tuesday for the next year, it's like, okay, we're gonna have to be reserving that well ahead. So.
That's true. I think, and as our policies are right now, there's only a few different things that we allow to reserve that far in advance too. Like, I think it's some private rentals, which I think do qualify in kind of that closed prime time quadrant 6. They are going to be paying, or what's the other one? Weddings. Thank you. Yeah. Weddings, same quadrant. Or I think we had tabling events or like resource fairs, which I don't really know that they would fall into these because they're open. So that would be like the sliding scale, maybe towards the higher side if they want to plan it the year out, like you're saying.
Do we have like this is gonna be a little bit tangent, so if the question doesn't make sense, we can just table it for some other time, but like, for certain size events, do we have a policy in place about users needing to have like an insurance policy for events? Because I told a colleague that this is like something we're discussing today, and they mentioned the idea of like wedding insurance, which I'd never even heard of that phrase before. But like, it's an event, it's something you very commonly have to have. This person, they were like, for my son's bar mitzvah, we had to have wedding insurance. And I was like, this is now a confusing new topic, but something that like, we're not talking about the wedding stuff right now, but I was just wondering if we even have that in place for any event,
For the big events.
the big events.
But now this is kind of changing the definitions of things, so we probably have to change that.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay.
Because it's in our policy matrix that we have right now, like who's required to have.
Insurance.
We cover most events though. They
Yeah.
just sign a liability waiver and then
Got
they
it.
don't need insurance.
Got
What feels to me with the goal of wedding insurance here, like looking at it and kind of what I was thinking might be more like, it's not like something that we would care that they have. They would want it because they're going to spend, a bunch of money on like, a bunch of cakes and travel and everything. And then it turns out that there's actually a giant earthquake or something. The wedding can't happen.
Well, that's kind of what I thought it was, but it's like, it's also include this concept, I'm not clear on it, also includes like if somebody were to trip, like an
it's
old
optional
relative
liability and weaker liability
harms their
coverage are
hip
also
at
available.
your wedding at the venue or something, maybe it's the venue's fault and those
Yeah.
things, and we have a unique set of venues that aren't,
Yeah, I think based on that, more risk I feel like comes when there's more people. And I think that's kind of how it's defined right now, is that if it's a high intensity, which would be like, I think it was over 50 people and they're moving around a lot. So if we wanted to set something like if you plan to have more than X amount of attendees, then we can require insurance.
yeah, I know it's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but it's just something that came up and I wanted to like make sure I flagged it in case I was the only one who wasn't aware.
It's part of the pricing in a way, or they can maybe even pay extra if they don't have insurance, but that's not really gonna.
No,
cover everything.
that'll be confusing for us. And so it's like something that could come up in this realm of like high intensity, high priced event could go into this quadrant also.
Right.
Or it's like a asterisk for certain of those.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that, but that's very important. So yeah, I think like over 100.
Maybe, I mean,
I feel like we should talk to Jamie about it.
yeah, we'll see. We should get the fire to give us the max occupancy and then.
The other example this person shared was that like wedding insurance that they got was $100 for $1 million in liability. So the rate isn't crazy expensive, but it's something that this event planner was recommending they have for their event. Or I think it was, the space they were renting, it was a part of their policy to rent this space. You had to also have this insurance.
Yeah, I definitely want to be able to, at least if we need insurance and we need them to pay for it, that they pay us rather than having to go get their own insurance. I mean, they can, but
Yeah,
That could be a burden for some users. It could
that is a big,
or they could drop the ball and not tell us. And then that becomes weird.
yeah. No, it's a hard one to figure out.
and the Parks District finally did succeed in getting some kind of insurance co-plan with the insurance company.
So that
So
people
we
can just pay them for it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't know, because when we get insurance for the parks, we add them as insured.
yeah, but that's better for us rather than paying
Right.
their co. But like,
Yeah.
but like if you're like a random like club or something that's going to throw a big thing, you could like I wanted to do something in a park at one point. It's like, well, thankfully I have a relationship with an insurance company. It's like I know how to like get my insurance company to like, try to cover this thing. And it was still just kind of annoying, but like I was able to do it. But like if I didn't have like a relationship with an insurance company, I'm like a student who's like trying to, how do you do this? And now
Yeah,
it's
it's a
like,
big
that
ask.
makes sense.
It's a big ask.
That makes
yeah.
sense.
Even if at the end, like only barely costs anything, it's like, how do you do it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It could be very affordable, but still be like a question mark for a user.
Right.
Any public comments on this?
No problem.
No public. All right. Any final thoughts here? You feel comfortable with what you got?
Yeah,
All right.
this is great. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda 3.2, public tree distribution policy preliminary discussion.
Jenna is not here today, and I assume it's because it's move out time and she's got a lot else happening. So I will say let's defer this to another meeting. We have another one. So.
Okay.
Sounds great. I think even if we, maybe actually if we do that, we don't have to ask for public comment. Moving on to 3.3, GM spending authority policy.
Okay,
What do we
so
got?
the board obviously has been talking about this, and it falls in line with the next one, which is what the claims maximum settlement authority is. We wanted to put them the same. So, let me put my share screen on. So here's the current policy and the current number of 1,500. So we just need to figure out a new number to use here.
What has come up recently that's like that?
So this,
What's the biggest thing that you paid for that you brought to us that we were like, why are you doing this?
I don't know what the last thing like that was, but I would say it was like
Yeah, I don't
probably in the
think-
$5,000 range was like the biggest thing that didn't feel like I felt like people didn't feel like, I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
it
now
just-
you be clear, I meant you occasionally come to us verifying things and we're like, why are you asking us? This
Oh,
is
yeah.
silly. And so I feel like there's some number there of like at least.
I don't know
like,
what that number, I mean, I think
Right.
it's a pretty small number. It's more similar to this. Like I
Okay.
brought something that was like 1,800 before
because of.
because it was this. So that's the
Yeah.
biggest, but I don't know if that's indicative. Like we're not gonna just make it 2,000, I
Okay.
assume, because
So you felt uncomfortable at one point with 5,000.
no, I said I think 5,000 is what most routine things fall under.
Oh, okay.
That's like my
Alright.
gut feeling. A lot of our bills are like our regular bills we pay out to like our consultants for our monthly charges. Most of those have been lower than 5,000 recently. Sometimes they're higher. Our attorney bills are over 5,000 or just about. If once we have those bills again, like the safety station monthly bill, that's usually in the 10,000+ range. Probably good for you guys to see that though, anyways.
My thought process,
Yeah.
what it's worth, is that if it's like a recurring invoicey sort of thing, our, what's it called, consent agenda is like, you can throw stuff on the consent agenda, and
Yeah.
it's kind of fine for that. Like, I like my mental model of the need for this kind of like, oh, you should be able to like do this thing without consulting us, is for something that like is kind of like a one-off random, like you need to do something to fix
Mhm.
something. It's it's like, it's really silly that to come to the board or to ask us for this thing, or like you needed a piece of unexpected purchase to, for this, for the event that's occurring, the thing, or like the projector breaks, all sorts of whatever happens, right?
Right.
And having us essentially having to verify all the things, but like from the perspective of like the safety stations, I mean, even if that was only $1,000 a month, it's, I mean, we negotiated a contract for that, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't really mentally model that as like a
An
purchase.
expense. Yeah.
It's
No,
like-
I mean, I think some agencies don't even put it on after the contract's been approved too. I mean, I don't think we.
Yeah, I
have
could
to do
even
that.
see, not putting in the consent agenda, but like whatever the high or low, it's not really a purchase. It's
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's not a new thing. We approve. Yeah. But the board, they did seem like the board wanted to match this number to the claim number, which is like kind of should be a higher number. They sort of,
Yeah, the claim number should be a higher number.
yeah, but that's like, should we then not link it? Like, should we go back and tell the board then keep these separate numbers? Because the discussion during the claim resolution was it should be the same number, but they wanted a higher number for the claim.
was that number decided?
It was like 10 or 25,000, I think,
Okay.
was what I remember hearing, but it could be up to 50. We said not 50, but I think it was like in the 10 to 25 range. But it's like, we can go back and say, well, we considered it and we thought that having these as separate issues makes sense too.
And the argument at the board was that we want them to be the same so that when a claim comes in, you can, at your discretion, pay the claim.
I think there was just like a preference for the numbers to be the same. I don't know what the reason was. I can't give you a good reason,
Okay.
but they are separate. No, because if we're able to sell the claim, let's say you put the claim when it's 25,000 and spending authority at 5, you could still settle the claim at 25 if the spending authority was different, because they're two separate. They're technically two separate things. So you can't.
Oh,
have-
we delegated a claim authority to you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And so
yeah,
if I was
yeah,
going to
okay,
settle
yeah,
something
that's
for
not-
22, it's outside of my spending authority.
Yeah.
So, but I think it was just like a general preference, like, oh, it's nice if these matched. I think that's what I got the
I can
sense
see
of.
that.
Yeah.
That way you just know if anything comes in under a certain amount, whatever it is, you don't have to try to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's obvious when it's a claim though and not a claim. So it's,
The
trying to think of a scenario where it's like you want to make a big expense, you want to not have to verify with us. You get a friend in order to claim something was damaged, you then provide a. It's weird. It's not.
the
Big
IVCSD,
file claim against the district, you authorize the claim, purchase gets made.
I don't think that won't happen. We have enough checks and balance. But and again, it's the Jamie will be involved in that too. But IVRPD's number is 5,000. Their general manager spending authority
I mean, if nothing else, this number's been the same for how long?
since 2017.
Okay, and like inflation has brought this up probably to about 3,000.
I don't know, 3,000, but yeah. I can find that out for you very fast.
Cumulative inflation. Oh, yeah, it's not that
Yeah, it's only 1,900.
much.
So, yeah, IVRPD, any contracts in excess of 5,000 go to the board.
You said that a lot of the things that happen are under 5,000. We've got another district that's using 5,000. I'm okay with 5,000.
Did you say that things are under 5,000 or right around 5,000?
Under around,
Okay.
I don't think there's a lot in the 5,000 to 10,000 range.
Okay.
Usually like the big things are the big things.
Mhm.
Yeah. I didn't go do a check of the consent calendar, like to see like, oh, what's the pattern of the numbers, but it's either like from the 1,000 to 5,000 range, there's a good like series of things, and then over 10,000 is another
Mhm.
set of things.
I think 5,000 sounds good.
I'm comfortable with that.
Is there any public comment on this?
No.
Do you feel you've got what you need? Yes. Do we have anything else we want to add? Sounds like no. Moving on to 3.4, government claim settlement authority.
So yeah, now we can decide if we want, what number we want this to be, if we want it to be different than the 5,000 or have it be the 5,000. That is the question.
Well, so on this one, are we looking at that second whereas paragraph, the $50,000 number?
That's the max.
That's the max. And so is there a part where we're setting, is there a paragraph I should look to where we're setting a number or?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
the
the section 3.
So we passed it at 1,500, but we said we'd edit it
Got it. Now I remember.
Mhm.
after we did the GM authority. But yeah, the board did want the same number, but you guys can say, well, we thought that number should be lower and we recommend a different number. I don't know how strong the preference was from everybody else.
What was the last claim amount that we were discussing?
The last one was $1 million. So that's, and then we had one for 1,800. We had another one for, yeah, in the low thousands, like $2,000 or so. That one got withdrawn.
I could see conceptually putting 5,000 in again. Was there, do you remember some kind of strong feeling of the board that should be 20,000?
I remember that was the number that was said
Mhm.
the most,
Okay.
but they didn't, that's the thing, it was said about this 20,000, but it wasn't said like the GM authority should be 20,000. You could punt it back to the board and just say, we edited the GM one, you guys can decide this one now as a whole.
I do feel like the benefit of punting it back to the board is that we have more situations, like potential situations, like shared aloud, that the three of us aren't drumming up right now, that will help inform the number.
Mhm.
If it's not, if the claim is for 7,000, is this kind of thing that you could see in the situations where you would have felt comfortable just paying the 7,000 if we had made it 10,000, if we made this 10,000, that if we make this 5,000, you would feel comfortable putting it on the consent calendar and we would all just kind of wave it past?
Yeah, we would just do that. We just put it on the consent calendar. It's more of like, do you guys want to see them and add it to the board agenda? You guys might not care. IVRPD, I think theirs is higher because they might just not want those things on their agenda, but
Maybe they don't want them public.
yeah.
Kind of remember did that come up with the board?
That was, yeah, there was some board opinion about
Okay.
that. It wasn't like unanimous though.
I could see that point.
Yeah, they have it in their policy to not bring it to the board if it's within
There is no number.
there is no number. Just don't
Not in
bring it
that
to the
paragraph.
board.
And could.
They never bring the claim to the board. How do they pay it?
Maybe they have a separate
Which
resolution.
has been previously authorized by the board. Any claim for payment for any, which has been previously authorized. It feels like it almost sounds like it's like an invoice. Like
Yeah,
this doesn't
is
feel.
this talking about?
But this says claims against the
It
district.
does.
It's pretty
Yeah, it sounds
specific.
kind of, the title sounds kind of brutal, but then the description sounds kind of like if somebody comes and says, hey, I invoiced you for the 5,000, you haven't paid it yet. So.
That's the only reference to
Right.
claims in their
Hmm.
policy manual. Too many tabs.
In the case, there we go, that there is a claim and we choose to pay the claim, is it potentially the case that if you were able to handle it, that we never have to make it public at all?
That is possible. Yeah, I could keep you informed about it.
And
Like,
we
I
would just
could
get
send you guys
coded
an
in the
email,
budget under like discretionary expense of the general manager, like what would, how would?
We have a
it, like,
self-insurance fund.
self-insurance fund. Interesting.
Hello.
Hello.
Do you know where the funds for public interest office would be?
It's upstairs.
Upstairs? Okay, and is it locked? Because all of the doors are.
They're except, I don't know, they're a new tenant. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll just call them. Thank you.
And are you using self-insurance is what we're.
We do have a self-insurance reserve, and so that could be the source. We could put that even into the policy that that's where things are paid out from, and it's like $100,000 and some $1,000,
Okay.
$150,000.
And if somebody cared about that, they could file a public information request.
They could.
And you give it, like, it's
I'd
not
have-
something
yeah.
where we'd be able to keep it secret in that case.
No,
Some
no,
things
we'd have to give it up.
We'd have to, all right.
Yeah. And we can discuss the claims in the closed session if we really needed to, and then pay it out in the open session. Like, you'd approve funding the claim in open session. But we can discuss it if we need it, if there was like a really complex claim that came before us, but
When we approve it at open session, do we have to describe the claim? Or can it be that a claim was made against the district? We will
I
discuss it in
think we'd
closed
have to have
session.
some of the details of it, like how much and by who.
Okay.
Yeah, like the
But
date
since
and
somebody
the
could
name
ask
and-
us and we'd be forced to give it over anyway. I guess I'm feeling that because it doesn't have to waste the board time, because it can go on the consent agenda. And it ended up being public anyway. I'm feeling 5,000. But I don't know if you.
Yeah, I kept kind of coming to that same loop of like, even this way of trying to protect us publicly discussing it, it always does end up somehow being public, especially if the public wants it through PRA, then they like still end up getting the information.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was hard for me to imagine a situation where the privacy like supremely benefits us.
So are you agreeing with this idea of doing 5,000?
Yeah.
You go with 5,000.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
That's all we needed for today.
All right, is there any public comment on that?
No.
Okay, you got what you needed. Sounds like we're done with that. Moving on to future meeting dates, future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the public meeting will take place on Tuesday, May 21st.
Oh,
2020.
my bad.
That's not right.
Typo.
Oh, yeah, clearly that's not right.
June 18th.
On Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and at the community room at 970 Barbadale Del Mar, Isla Vista, California.
He said June. I think I'm gonna be out of town that week.
Yeah, and I was gonna just have gotten back from vacation the day before, so we could count this as our June meeting and get back to it later.
Yeah, I'll definitely be out of the country then.
If you might feel a need to need that meeting, we would leave it on the regular thing, adjourn this meeting to then, and then cancel it when it comes up.
We could, yeah, we
Or
can
would
just
you like,
cancel it.
or if we're okay just saying, like, are you saying you just want to get rid of it now, or? This comes up at LAFCO occasionally. It's like we will purposefully not cancel a meeting.
Yeah,
on
let's
future
not
agenda
cancel
items.
it now.
Okay.
We'll figure that out later.
Okay, great. Moving on to adjournment. I'm just gonna call this meeting adjourned at 5:02 p.m.
Thank you, guys. Efficient.